We welcome back one of our regular players who's made such tremendous contribution over the years. That is Paul Merton. We also have one of our oldest players. He's been with the show since it first began. He's a senior citizen of Just a Minute. His contributions are valuable. That is Peter Jones. Someone who's played it less often, but with great aplomb when he does come here. The effervescent and witty Stephen Fry. And bringing up the feminine side of our show, we have the delightful and humorous Maria McErlane. We're going to begin the show this week with Peter Jones, and who better? Peter, the subject is miracles. Will you tell us something about miracles in this game, starting now?
A miracle is an event that cannot really occur without some divine or supernatural intervention. And it's often misused, this word. And you sometimes hear of a script writer who submitted a script to the BBC, and he tells you that within 2 days he received a telegram in reply and an offer of huge amounts of money if they were able to use it. And this, of course, he describes as a miracle, which indeed it would be. But what I am hesitating to...
Maria McErlane, you challenge.
Well, he just looked like he was fed up with it now.
No, he realized he was hesitating and he admitted it. And that is a correct challenge, Maria. So you get a point for a correct challenge. You take over the subject, which is miracles. You have 21 seconds available, starting now.
Frankly, it will be a miracle if I get through the next 10 seconds without being challenged, because...
Paul Merton challenge.
I don't believe in miracles.
Well, as that's not a correct challenge, we give Paul a bonus point because we enjoyed the interruption, but Maria gets a point because she was interrupted. She keeps the subject. 16 seconds available. Miracles, Maria, starting now.
One of my favourite miracles was turning water into wine. The end.
Stephen Fry challenge.
A little bit of hesitation, I think.
Yes, I think she waited for effect and it didn't come.
No, I didn't wait for effect. I really had nothing more to say. Right. That was my favourite miracle.
So, Stephen Fry, correct challenge, a point to you, 10 seconds available. Miracles starting now.
Turning Le Piador into wine, that would be a miracle, wouldn't it? Mind you, of course, that was our Lord's first miracle at the wedding at Canaan, I believe.
Yes, Paul challenged just
before... Cana, wasn't there an before Cana there?
I didn't notice it.
Did you not? Then it probably didn't happen.
I did.
We're going to have confrontation, are we, already, in the first round? Because the whistle was blown very strongly in my ear, so I didn't actually hear whether there was a hesitation or not. So I think the fair thing to say is that I didn't hear it. So, Stephen, you were speaking as the whistle went. You gained an extra point for doing so. And at the end of that round, Stephen Fry and Paul and Miriam McErlane are equal in the lead with 2 points. Paul Merton has 1. Peter Jones started, but he's... No, and Paul Merton, it's your turn. Begin. Paul, the subject now, Beelzebub. Tell us something about that character, or any way you like, in just a minute, starting now.
I would pronounce it Beelzebub. Of course, it's a name for the horned one, Satan, Lucifer, whatever you like, Mephistopheles.
Stephen Fry,
I also answer to Stephen.
I said Stephen, yes.
No, I'm saying the horned one, I'm saying... Just, I was offering
making
help.
a joke, Nicholas.
He was looking for names.
He was making a joke.
Oh, he was making a joke.
No, don't worry about it.
You probably couldn't hear it because the whistle was going at the same time.
So what was your challenge?
No, there wasn't one.
There wasn't. Just a waste of time, so Paul gets a point for being interrupted.
There, you've been told now, haven't you?
Sirs in a bait today.
49 seconds available for you, Paul, on Beelzebub, starting now.
I suppose if one believes in the devil, then you also have to think that there is such a thing as God. And I'm not really sure, and anybody knows I don't, because if there is such a thing as the great creator...
Paul, Stephen, you challenged.
Stephen, my name's Stephen.
I know it is Stephen.
Two such a things...
such a thing.
Yes, such a thing as God and such a thing as devil. There was
which is correct. That is probably right. He did say that. So, Stephen, you have a correct challenge. You have 37 seconds. Tell us something about Beelzebub starting now.
You keep saying Beelzebub. I think most people say Beelzebub. We don't mind. You can say what you like. Nobody cares. All this is anyway. Satanic, of course, but a wonderful word. What a marvellous sound it is, Beelzebub. You don't get many nicer conjunctions of syllables and consonants than that. Not in my book, anyway. And other people's you might, of course. I believe Satan is in history and mythology in all kinds of cultures and civilizations. It's hard to imagine the human condition without some Manichaean division between good and evil. Satan, I said Satan again.
Yes, and Paul Merton challenge.
There was a repetition of Satan.
There was a repetition of Satan. Yes, so Paul, another correct challenge and another point and 7 seconds on Beelzebub or Beelzebub, depending on which Latin you were taught at school, starting... Yes, it's not. That's not Latin. No. No. But some of the pronunciations.
Oh, you escaped well from that one, Nicholas.
I know. 7 seconds, Paul. Starting now.
I can picture that satanic face now announcing the words, "Welcome to just a minute," and you know the smell of brimstone is in the air.
And you really think they play this game in hell, do you? So Paul Merton, speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point for doing so, and he's in the lead. One ahead of Stephen Fry, then Maria McErlane, and then Peter Jones in that order. And Stephen, your turn to begin. The subject is Defying the Laws of Nature. 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
Something I've been doing all my adult life, I fear. I don't think it's actually possible to defy the laws of nature. Nature, the Greek physis, of course, means what is the state of things. People often say that humanity defies the laws of nature by the invention of machines and so on. We are a product of nature. Everything comes out of us is natural, you see. However, we're so guilty, we're so raddled by this appalling shame of our human condition that we somehow imagine that we defy the laws of nature. We don't. We are nature. For God's sake, get that into your thick skulls, all of you. Don't feel that somehow we have to apologize to the universe for being what we are, products of nature. Proud of it, we should be. Also aware of the differences we make to the environment when nature laws seem not to be flouted so much as to be...
We got a bit garbled there.
I don't know, I think he was looking for votes, I was...
He was doing very well.
Yeah, he was doing very well, yes. So, right. What is your challenge, then?
It sort of became...
Anything, really, to do, I think.
A bit deviation, really. It was a bit garbled there, wasn't it?
Well, he did repeat something, but you didn't spot that. I don't think it was garbled. No, I think he was keeping going.
Did you follow everything he was saying?
Yes, absolutely, every single word.
Would you like to repeat the last sentence?
Stephen, because of your great aplomb, I'm going to say that you didn't hesitate in any way, so you keep the subject. 18 seconds, defying the laws of nature, starting now.
It rather defies the laws of nature to have a greater aplomb than other people. However, I seem to have one, and you were the one who said it, and I must believe you, because everything you say is law, is nature to us. We wouldn't defy the laws of Nicholas Parsons any more than we defy the laws of... so, we mustn't defy them.
Stephen Fry kept going till the whistle went, gained an extra point for doing so. In fact, he started with the subject and finished with the subject, so he was interrupted once. He got points in that round. He's equal with Paul Merton in the lead at the end of the round. Peter Jones, The Sound of Music, 60 seconds, starting now.
It was one of those great musicals that were composed by my old friends Oscar Hammerstein and Richard Rogers, including Carousel, Oklahoma, and one other that escapes me. It was South Pacific.
Stephen Fry.
Oh, I thought he might have been thinking of the Flower Drum song. I was helping him out there. Another one of theirs. Not such a great one, but South Pacific is right, yes.
44 seconds to continue with The Sound of Music, starting now.
Not many people appreciate the lyrics, and they were, I thought, terrific. One in particular in South Pacific, which was, "You've got to be taught to love and hate," and I thought it was so clever of them to put...
Stephen Fry challenge.
Well, I do agree with that, but I think they are drifting a little from The Sound of Music,
Yes,
and we're talking about the lyrics of South Pacific.
You're on to the subject of South Pacific now, not The Sound of Music. It would have been better, you would have been with The Sound of Music.
Well, that's a sort of post-mortem remark.
So Stephen has a correct challenge, and he has 31 seconds. He will tell us something now about The Sound of Music, starting now.
He who has no music... hello?
Paul, John. Yeah, first time you haven't come straight in. That's amazing, yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes. 30 seconds. The Sound of Music's with you, Paul, starting now.
Well, it's a universal sound. Wherever you go in the world, it has its own particular type of music. The Aborigines play musical sounds on a didgeridoo, which is a marvellously long instrument that makes very deep bass notes. If you go to somewhere like Bali, they specialise in these huge gongs which they hit regularly, which make the most extraordinarily...
Maria McErlane, challenge.
2 witches in quick succession.
Yes. Maria, you have a correct challenge. You have 8 seconds. The Sound of Music, starting now.
I'd like to...
Stephen Fry challenge.
Well, that was as long as my hesitation.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it bloody was.
No, it wasn't. Maria, you have an incorrect challenge. You had... She didn't even go for more than a second. 6.5 seconds available. The Sound of Music starting now.
I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony.
Paul Merton challenge.
Why? The racket. Because if everybody in the world was singing at the same time.
It would be a beautiful sound of music.
Maria, you have 2 seconds to continue on The Sound of Music starting now. That hesitation was definitely very strong, and there's 1 second for you on The Sound of Music starting now.
Maria von Trapp.
So Stephen Fry was then speaking as the Whistlewind gained that extra point for doing so, and Paul, your turn to begin. Goody Two-Shoes. Tell us something about that in this game starting now.
Well, it's a derogatory term for people who have no apparent personal vices. They don't smoke, drink, gamble, any of the sort of habits that we associate with somebody who's an interesting character. I think most individuals who are goody two-shoes are in fact quite boring, because you have to have some kind of criminal activity to make an interesting person, I think. Look at Dr. Crippen. Who would have heard of him if he'd simply filled out his prescriptions day in, 24 hours out?
Stephen.
I concede gracefully that was very good.
Well, it was almost hesitation,
It was,
but because he was so cleverly struggled round it, you're going to be generous and say, let him continue. Right, another point to you, Paul. 27 seconds, goody two-shoes starting now.
I think people who are goody two-shoes are actually quite devious underneath the surface. They're up to something that the rest of us can't fathom, because there's no fun in being perfectly good. What would be the reason for...
Stephen. Yes,
that time there was a hesitation.
Yes. Goody Two-Shoes is with you, Stephen. 12 seconds available, starting now.
There's never been a Goody One-Shoes, has there? Or a Goody Three-Shoes, which is rather mysterious. What is it about the number of footwear for Maria,
challenge.
Yes, mumbling.
Well, all right, hesitation, if you like. 4 seconds. Goody Two-Shoes with you, Maria. Starting now.
I would say that Stephen Fry was perhaps a goody two-shoes when he was at school. He's certainly something of this.
Oh, yes, I'm sure Stephen's a goody two-shoes when he first started, yes. But he made up for it later, didn't he?
He was a baddie no-sandals.
Right. So, at the end of that round, Stephen Fry is 1 point ahead of Paul Merton. Maria McErlane follows, and it's her turn to begin. And the subject is my best impressions. Tell us something about those in this game, starting now.
It's unfortunate that I was going to do my best impression, which was Snozzle Durante, singing, I should have my piano the other day. But, of course...
Paul, you challenge.
That was your best impression? God help us all. I mean, that couldn't be further away.
It could have been awful, but it could still be her best impression, couldn't it?
All right, well, let's see then. She runs the gamut.
51 seconds, Maria.
Oh,
still
no.
the point. My best impression.
It's too late for me to kill myself.
Carry on now.
Oh, Tom. Felicity Kendall. Well, you know it.
Stephen challenge you.
Repetition of
Why you started with Jimmy Durante's beyond me, really. That is your worst one.
Well, I thought it would make the others sound better.
It did.
I'm sorry to have interrupted the Brian Ferry, because that was obviously going to be very good.
That was a correct challenge by Stephen, but I was... So, Stephen, you had a correct challenge, so you take over my best impressions, and 37 seconds are available starting now.
I think my best impressions are made when I sit on soft wax when naked. However, perhaps the question on the card expects one to talk about impersonations, mimicry of some kind. My mimesis is not really my game. I know Nicholas Parsons, when he started out, gave very good impressions. That was indeed his trade, his business. I used to do Oliver Postgate.
Paul Merton challenge.
Was there a hesitation there?
Yes, I think he was running down to a halt, actually, yes. Horrible. Right, there we are. Paul, so you take over the subject of my best impressions, and there are 18 seconds starting now.
Perhaps my best impression is Clement Freud. As sits behind the desk with his usual bonhomie and his wonderful way of spreading happiness wherever he goes, in that voice which can't help but make you feel so light-hearted.
When Clement Freud is on the show, he sits beside Paul Merton, and so he's had a lot of practice listening to that voice in his ear. And he reproduced it most entertainingly, and he's now equal in the league with Stephen Fry and Peter Jones. Oh, Peter, it's my first 70 years. Well, it could be mine, I don't know, but I mean, we're talking about the subject, that is it. Take it any way you like, and you start now.
My first 70 years was a lot of fun, really, and I enjoyed it enormously until when I was 71, I was invited to join the National Theatre, or it may have been the Royal Shakespeare, one or other. One or other of those big
Paul Merton
companies.
Jarvis.
It was National Car Parks.
And
but it felt like the National Theatre, did it?
one or other. You know, it was at the Barbican, that's right.
Paul, have you any other
No,
challenge?
that was it.
No other challenge?
No
Oh, that's
other
very
challenge.
generous of you. So, Peter, you continue with 44 seconds still available. My first 70 years, starting now.
I was unfortunate inasmuch as the director of the play that I was in at the beginning was out of his mind, in my opinion, because he wanted me to do things that were quite unnatural to me, and he was dressed head to foot in black, and he was quite notorious, and people said, is he having a nervous breakdown? And I said, yes, it's the 15th year of it. And anyway, I didn't subscribe to his view of the play or the part, and I left halfway through, because the revolve didn't go round, which was one of the things that Barbican was famous for. Not it not going round, but going round.
You challenge, Paul.
Repetition of round.
Yes, that's right, yes, he did say round. I heard him say it, but it's quite true, yes. Actually, I was so transfixed with Peter's description, which was so repetitious, that I couldn't believe it. And I thought, when is someone going to challenge? And I didn't realise that Paul had, because there was no noise. It came, just a light came on. And that's why I didn't immediately leap round and say, Paul, you've challenged. According to this thing, the time is up. Did Paul challenge before the time up came? He did. Right, Paul, what was your challenge? Round, yes, repetition of round.
Repetition of
well
round.
done. Now, I've got to guess how many available when you
I think it was
challenge.
about 3.
No, it's more than that, definitely. So there are 7 seconds on my first 70 years, starting now.
Well, I'm only 42 at the moment, but if I do live for the appropriate time, I hope to be playing just a minute. Here.
So Paul Merton was speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point, and he's now 1 point ahead of Stephen Fry. The other two are trailing just a little bit behind them. And Maria, it's your turn to begin. Troglodytes. Tell us something about those creatures in this game, starting now.
Troglodyte, cave dweller. I had an extraordinary dream last night about Nicholas Parsons, dressed in a loincloth, dragging me round the cave by my hair.
Paul, you challenge.
Seek professional help.
Peter, you have a challenge
I
too.
think she said caves twice.
Yes, that's quite right. Cave dwellers and then dragging round cave. Well done.
Peter, well listened. And you have 50 seconds to tell us something about Troglodytes, starting now.
Troglodytes, it was a pop group that started in Devon in 1960 and finished in Somerset, like many of them do, a few months later. But the original Troglodytes lived in caves, and they couldn't find any houses, and so they lived in them, and they were able to communicate with each other by tapping the walls. the bones or skulls of the dinosaurs.
Maria, you challenge.
Well, why didn't they just go outside and speak to each other? Why did they have to tap the walls?
Well, this doesn't matter. I mean...
It does matter, Nicholas.
In just a minute, was he hesitating, repeating something, or deviating?
If you're living in a cave, it doesn't show a high degree of intelligence in the first place. So you may well tap on the
Well,
wall.
we
rather
haven't
than
come
going-
here to have an intellectual discussion about cave dwellers. It's
Well,
whether you-
why are we here then?
I was just Sorry, I feel
to
like a fool
entertain
now.
and keep going on a subject without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. Maria, did he commit any of those particular sins or faults or break any of those rules in just a minute?
No.
Peter, so you had an incorrect challenge, and you have 28 seconds available now on Troglodytes, starting now.
If we were able to go back in time, millions of years, of course, enormous amount of this...
Paul, yes.
There was a hesitation.
There was a hesitation. You
Yes.
couldn't get another word for years. Right. 19 seconds, Troglodytes with you, Paul, starting now.
Well, they're the most charming people. They're very small. They're easily...
Stephen, Charles.
So, again, really...
Yes. Hesitation. Right. Troglodytes is with you, Stephen, and 14 seconds available, starting now.
I'm rather intrigued by these original troglodytes who went from Devon and ended up, as so many of them do, in Somerset. I want to know more about them. I know there was a band called the Trogs. Perhaps that's...
Yes,
That's what they were, is it? Oh, fascinating.
Oh, yes.
Okay. It's rather pleasing, isn't it?
Maria, challenge.
Well, that was a conversation.
I know.
They didn't hesitate to repeat or deviate.
I know. But this is the interesting thing, is though it was a conversation, Stephen Fry still managed to keep going without...
As I usually do in conversations, I'm afraid.
So, Stephen, it was an incorrect challenge. You have 2 seconds on Troglodytes, starting now.
Lived in caves has been amply pointed out by most of our contestants in this game.
Stephen, speaking as a whistle, Wayne gained that extra point. He's now one ahead of Paul Merton as we go into the final round, followed by Peter Jones, Maria McErlane. That order, not far behind. Stephen begins, and it's a bee in my bonnet as the subject. Stephen, you start now.
There is a bee in my bonnet. There are 2 N's in my bonnet, and 1 Y in my bonnet.
Maria McErlane, challenge.
Sorry, no, I was doing Bonnet. And that's part of it, isn't it? Sorry, Stephen.
Oh, that's right.
Stephen, it's still with you. A bee in my bonnet, 53 seconds available, starting now.
In Regency days, or at least in what Georgette Hare calls Regency days, they used to say, I've said Regency days twice. Someone was Sorry.
Stephen, you did exactly what you did last
No, I'm sorry,
time.
I keep doing that. It's excitement.
You challenged yourself.
Oh, yes.
I know.
Sorry.
So what is your challenge?
Well, I said Regency days twice.
I know you did. So that's the correct challenge.
Thank you.
You're getting too clever at this game.
I can't help but feel this is a loophole that should be closed.
Stephen, another point, 48 seconds. A bee in my bonnet, starting now.
A maggot in my brain was another phrase meaning the same thing in the old days. A bee in the bonnet means, of course, to have some sort of obsession, some idée fixe or other. I have a bee in my bonnet about Christian Scientists, for example. I think they're rather wonderful and rather sweet people. I meant to say Scientologists, who I think are absolutely arse-wipingly bad. However, I got it slightly confused. I have a bee in my bonnet about my inability to separate different cult religions, one of which is respectable, the other which is simply appalling. I have a bee in my bonnet about the fact that I have a bee in my bonnet. That's the most annoying thing. Why does one get so exercised about life and all its variety? Losing a key or a sock or something can send one into an absolute spin. There are so many more important things to worry about. One gets bees in one's bonnet about silly things. That's what the phrase really refers to.
If the key is the key to your house, it's quite...
Fair point. I accept that. If it is indeed the opening device that unlocks your house, then you've got something of a problem.
Paul Merton's challenge.
Well, he definitely wasn't talking while Peter was. But there's got to be hesitation.
Yes, no, well, I think we interpret that as hesitation. I mean,
Can we throw each other off our stride simply by
it's
talking?
much that when another panelist actually, as you're talking, starts to have a conversation with you. I know he was.
I know he's being friendly, but...
He's going with
Not
great
waiting for the
style.
bus, you know.
You should have saved your material for when you get in, Peter. Using the key. Anyway, no, I agree with your challenge, Paul. So you have a point for that, of course, and you have only 6 seconds available.
You'll find I loosened the lid now. You can unscrew it pretty easily.
Paul, you have a correct challenge. A bee in my bonnet, starting now.
Perhaps the biggest bee in my bonnet is that in just a minute you are allowed to repeat yourself, then challenge...
Well, as I said earlier, that was to be the last round, and indeed it is. So let me give you the final situation. Maria McErlane, who gave such sterling contribution, and against this aggressive male opposition. Outnumbered 3-1. Great. But she finished only just in 4th place. A couple of points behind Peter Jones. Did magnificently, finishing in 3rd place. He was a few points behind Stephen Fry. And Stephen was only 1 point behind Paul Merton, so we say, Paul, you are the winner this week. So it only remains for me to say thank you to the four outstanding exponents of Just a Minute, Paul Merton, Stephen Fry, Peter Jones and Maria McErlane. And we hope this audience here in the Radio Theatre in London has enjoyed themselves, because we've enjoyed being with them and entertaining.
Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello. My name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my pleasure to welcome our many listeners throughout the world, and also the four individual, diverse, and exciting personalities who this week are going to play this particular game. Well, we welcome back one of the long-standing players of the game, who's been with the show since it first began over 30 years ago. That is Clement Freud. We welcome two very talented comedy performers, the outrageous Graham Norton, the more reserved Stephen Frost, and we also welcome a very distinguished, legitimate actor from the world of theatre, and that is Martin Jarvis. But would you please welcome all four of them? And as usual, I'm going to ask them to speak on a subject that I give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviating from the subject. Beside me sits Janet Staplehurst, who's going to help me keep the score and blow a whistle when 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute comes from the Gateway Theatre in the delightful, ancient, and historic city of Chester. And before us, in this raked auditorium, we have an enthusiastic Cheshire audience ready to cheer us on our way with their Cheshire smiles. Let us begin the show with Graham Norton. Oh, Graham, what a good subject. Well, any time of the year, I suppose. Hangovers. Will you tell us something about hangovers in 60 seconds, starting now?
The worst sort of hangovers I find are those bellies on a man of a certain age that hangs over his belt like a fleshy bag of heavy shopping from Netto or some such establishment. That's the sort of supermarket that probably doesn't exist here in posh Chester. Yes, this is the town where you can buy potpourri.
Oh, Clement Freud, you've challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
Chester's a city.
Well,
I'm writing that down.
As we are in the city of Chester, I could not but do anything but accept that challenge. So, Clement, a correct challenge. You get a point for that. You take over the subject of hangovers. There are 34 seconds available, and you start now.
It's a very odd thing that people deny being drunk and are ashamed of it, but are hugely proud of their hangovers. I think it should be made clear that when you're inebriated, it really doesn't count unless...
Stephen Frost challenged.
Hesitation.
That's right. And you've got 20 seconds, and it's hangovers starting now.
The worst hangover I ever had was when I drank 1 bottle of vodka, 2 jars...
You were so hungover you can't remember. Graham, you challenged first, yes.
I got a bit of hesitation.
Yes, we spotted it. 15 seconds are available. It's still with you, Graham. Another point. Hangovers starting now.
Myself and my friend Nicky drank a case of wine one evening.
Martin Jarvis challenged.
Exaggeration.
If only that were true.
So have you a challenge whether the rules are just a minute, Martin, or was it just nice to hear from you?
Well, it was very nice to be. It is very nice to be here.
Yes, but I'm afraid it was an incorrect challenge, but it was nice to hear from you. Graham, you have another point. 12 seconds available. Hangovers starting now.
The best sort of hangover is lying in bed watching an omnibus edition of Hollyoaks, filmed here in the city of Chester. How we love its gripping storylines.
Clement challenged you just before you...
Repetition of Chester.
You mentioned Chester before.
You're so right. But can you say it too often, good friends?
And Clement, you've cleverly got in with 1 second to go on the subject of hangovers starting now.
If you can lie on the floor.
Whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion it was Clement Freud and Martin Jarvis. Welcome to the show. It's been so many years since you had played this game, and we'd love to have you back. And we've got a subject for you to go on, friends in high places. I'm sure you know many, but talk on the subject starting now.
I made friends with a stewardess on the plane coming from California to London, and she said to me, would you like to come up and sit in the flight deck and see how we land at Heathrow? I said I'd love to. I sat behind the pilot. We landed perfectly with scarcely a bump. But the second officer turned round as we were just on the runway and said, this is where the problems begin. We don't know where the gate is. They got out a map.
Hesitate.
Oh, I was leaving that gap for the laugh.
Yeah, I know. No, I'm afraid you can't. This is comedy theatre, not legit. You can't wait for laughs. You have to go with it, Martin. Go with the flow. Stephen got in with 32 seconds to go. Friends in high places, Stephen, starting now.
I was queuing up to go into a nightclub last night, and it was at least 30...
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of night.
I was queuing up to go to the nightclub last night. Yes, it's quite right. Yes, it is.
You've been on the show.
Wait a minute. Nightclub is one word.
It is one word, but...
Nightclub is one word. 28 seconds. Friends in high places with you, Stephen, starting now.
I decided to go home because I couldn't wait to go in. But all of a sudden, the bouncer...
Clement Freud challenge.
Is go hyphenated as well?
Sarcasm is not hyphenated. And go is...
the Go-Go Club. Come on.
Clement, you've got it this time. 24 seconds. Friends in high places, starting now.
I'm never sure where high places are. Ideally, I suppose it is God, but often they live at number 10 Downing Street, the House of Commons, the Palace of Westminster.
Martin Jarvis challenged.
Hesitation?
No.
Oh?
No, it's difficult to do a list, and he's quite good at it, and...
Give up now is really what's being told.
13 seconds. I don't know if he's going to go on. Friends in high places, Clement. Another point to you, starting now.
If you go to Kathmandu, you're almost bound to have friends who have been to high places, because Everest towers above that country. Snow peaks show through...
No, Graham.
No, I didn't touch it. Put off my hand.
You don't want to take your challenge?
Oh, he did hesitate.
He did hesitate. He hesitated literally, was just running down, and that was a definite hesitation. And you've got him with half a second to go. Starting now.
Phoebe is my...
End of that round, Graham Norton and Stephen Frost got points. They're both equal in second place. Clement Freud is just in the lead. And Stephen, it is your turn to begin. The subject is Chester. Tell us something about this wonderful city in 60 seconds. Oh, we know how to endear ourselves, yes. 60 seconds, starting now.
As we all know now, Chester is not a town, but a city. And the reason why it has acclaimed this title is because it has a cathedral. Built here, of course, by that famous architect.
Martin, you challenged.
Well, he wasn't exactly waiting for the laugh. There was a great laugh, as of course there always is with Steve, but he did pause while it happened.
He didn't pause, he came to a full stop.
So I feel he did hesitate.
We interpret that as hesitation, Martin, and you've got a point, and you have 46 seconds. You tell us something about Chester, starting now.
I love Chester because not only does my son work in Nicholas Street in the chambers there, but one of the great headmasters in this wonderful place, Roger Wixon, my old school friend, is at the place that they educate people at just down the road. Also,
the point. Yes, it's good.
Creep.
Isn't that beside the point?
I think
also repeated at.
You repeated that, actually, yes. But so it's a tough one to get at, but you did emphasise it as well. So, Clement, a correct challenge, 31 seconds. Chester, starting now.
Chester is hugely famous for its football club.
Martin, you challenged.
I feel terribly nervous about challenging Clement about anything, but I felt he hesitated.
He definitely played for the laugh. He got it, and he was content with that, and he stopped. So that is hesitation. And you have 20 seconds. You've got another point. You take back the subject of Chester, starting now.
Giles Brandreth was an MP here, and I'm keeping talking about my old chum who was actually in the...
Stephen Frost.
You got a bucket. Hesitation, he went, There was an in there.
He definitely put an in, I'm afraid, yes. Because the audience reaction was so powerful for Giles Brandreth, you sort of erred. 11 seconds for you, Stephen, on Chester, starting now.
Being an old Roman town, not a lot of people know that Chester is Latin.
Clement challenged.
Chester's a city.
Yes. But when the Romans were here, it was a town. But they didn't have cathedrals, because they weren't Christians.
You're right, Stephen. You did say an old Roman town, didn't you?
I did.
You did, and so it was an old Roman town which eventually got its cathedral and became a city. So I say that is not deviation. You keep the subject. You have Chester. You have 8 seconds, and you start now.
It is Latin for... yes, I said that.
Graham.
Repetition of Latin.
Yeah, that's the...
Yes?
Yeah, in fairness.
Yeah. No, yes,
Nothing
Latin.
picky. He did say it twice. I mean,
No.
Plays the game.
I'm glad you interrupted, because I haven't got a clue what it's Latin for.
All right, phew.
6 seconds. Yes. Chester, starting now.
The city of Chester is, of course, world famous now as the home of...
So at the end of that round, they've all got points, but the situation is exactly the same. Clement Freud is just in the lead. Second place, Graham Norton, Stephen Frost equal, and just behind them, Martin Jarvis and Clement Freud. Your turn to begin. And the subject now is a flat battery. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
A flat battery chicken is a fowl which has either been run over or possibly beaten by a cook with a rock or a flat knife. The very best thing to do with such a fowl is to dredge it in flour and salt and then fry it in a mixture of olive oil and butter until it is golden on each side. And people will say, this is one of the most delicious flat battery chickens I have eaten.
Graham.
Oh no, I'm wrong.
Yes.
The chicken and chickens.
It was chicken the first time and chickens that time, yes.
It was too easy. I walked right into it.
I know. No, he gets another point and he still carries on with a flat battery. And he has 31 seconds, starting now.
A crisp 3-inch high feathered friend, neatly grilled and done to a turn, is something that restaurants in the city of Chester have never sufficiently tried to sell to Japanese tourists who abound. Go where you will in this splendid location, and flat batteries attend your attention at every point. Thank you.
Well, that is just rambling now. That's just... Japanese tourists was the last bit that made sense. After that, it was just words.
I know. He was struggling. You could see it on his face. The audience actually were mouthing with him. It was tremendous fun.
Do write in for a transcript. I think it's about.
And you've cleverly got in with 5. After all Clement's hard work, he's gone for 55 seconds. You have 5 seconds to tell us something about a flat battery, Graham, starting now.
A flat battery meant that a bus stopped here in Chester and... Ooh.
So, Graham Norton getting that extra point for speaking as the whistle went, has moved forward. He's now only 1 point behind our leader, Clement Freud. And, Graham, it is your turn to begin. The subject, the Litmus test. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
The litmus test is one of the best tests I know. I've done many tests in my life, but the litmus test is by far the finest. Some people think it's about dipping some paper into another thing.
Stephen, you challenge first.
Hesitation.
Yes, it was a hesitation. Stephen, you had a correct challenge. You have 42 seconds. The litmus test is with you, starting now.
Of course, the word litmus is Latin for Chester. Hence, the name of this city should be called the city...
Martin, you challenge.
Everybody seems to hesitate on whatever that means.
I think he was trying to be too
hesitation.
involved and too clever, but it was delicious. Right, 34 seconds. You have the litmus test now, Martin, and you have 34 seconds, I said, starting now.
The litmus test is one of the least known of all cricket games in the world. In India, in this lovely place called Litmus, they play a game that is very, very different. I thought I was starting to learn, but clearly I'm not.
No, it's an impossible game. It's a fun game. That's part of the fun. Clement, you were the first to get in. 21 seconds. The litmus test starting now.
When I went to school as a very small boy, I was given a packet of litmus.
Stephen, challenge.
Well, deviation. He's not going to school as a man, is he?
I think, Stephen, to be fair, it's a phrase you might use when I went to school as a little boy.
I'm not particularly bothered. I was just...
No, but you were trying hard, which we...
I'm not really keen on this game. I'm just having to be interested.
16 seconds, Clement. Incorrect challenge. The litmus test starting now.
And my mother put a cash name tape around the litmus papers, so I was ever unable to take the tests. Didn't know whether it should turn purple, green, or pink, or whether the rabbit was dead or my nanny was pregnant, because...
Clement Freud speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point, and with other points in the round, he's moved forward. He's in a strong lead ahead of Graham Norton, Stephen Frost, and Martin Jarvis in that order. And Martin, your turn to begin. The subject is quite simply actors, or actors. 60 seconds starting now.
Marlon Brando once said, an actor is a guy, if you ain't talking about him, he isn't listening. And so I don't think this is true, because I know some wonderful actors. Sir John Gielgud, for example, is one of the greatest thespians in the world. The way he speaks is just so fantastic. We love him. Ralph Richardson is also an absolutely fantastic actor. I know he's gone from us now.
Graham Norton challenge.
Well, there are a few fantastics.
There was a repetition of fantastic.
Was there?
Well, actors are allowed to say fantastic.
Of course.
Yeah.
Silly me.
But Graham, he did repeat the word, so that's a correct challenge. And you have the subject of actors, and you have 39 seconds starting now.
Most people are not actors. They're not even members of the Hollyoaks cast. Though that fine program is one of my favourite, mostly for the outdoor scenes.
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of most.
The two most you have there, I'm afraid, yes. Clement, you're listening well. 27 seconds. Actors starting now.
One early winter afternoon, in the sailors' reading room at Ashby-la-Zouch, I met an actor. I could tell because he was wearing sandals and had dandruff, which was virtually terminal. Come here, he said, as did the ancient mariner.
Stephen has challenged.
Well, that's unfair. He's talking about Martin Jarvis, and I just don't like it. I don't think that's funny at all. I apologise. I'm turning to the half.
Right. Stephen, what we do there, because we enjoyed the interruption, we give you a bonus point because of the audience reaction justifies it. But as Clement was interrupted, he gets another point, and he keeps the subject of actors. 7 seconds available starting now.
A party of Bahamian bond dealers interrupted the conversation I had with this actor, who said...
So, Clement Freud was again speaking as the whistle went and has increased his lead. And Clement, it is your turn to begin. The subject is Greek myths. Tell us something about those in just a minute, starting now.
If you had a speech impediment, the answer to that would be Ariadne, Aurora, Persephone, Aphrodite. But if it is myths with a TH, I guess the Vestal Virgins who were slaughtered because the gods appreciated...
Martin Jarvis, you challenge.
I feel terrible about this, but...
The audience are feeling worse, but carry on.
I felt there was some hesitation there.
I think he was slowing down to a little bit of a halt, and we'll interpret that as hesitation, Martin, especially as you haven't played it quite as often as the others, and say 38 seconds available for you on Greek myths starting now.
Helen of Troy was a Greek myth. She it was who said, we'll always have Paris. Andromache, Cassandra, le trois de guerre n'aura pas lieu is the French.
Graham Norton challenge.
Repetition of le.
Oh, oui, yes. C'est vrai, certainement. Vous avez un bon point. Right.
That ends the World Service broadcast of this show.
We go around the world with this one, so they'll enjoy that. Right.
Won't understand it, but
well, they'll understand you, Graham, if you tell us something about Greek myths in 26 seconds, starting now.
Of all Greek myths, surely the greatest is that the doner kebab is a form of food. It is, of course, a manufacturing device for slipper innards. You simply slice down whatever that was, if it ever lived, and...
Stephen, challenge.
I'm going for a repetition of ever.
Yeah, there were 2 errors. Whatever that was, if it ever lived.
Ah, yes.
It's very difficult. So an incorrect challenge, Graham, and you still have Greek myths and 7 seconds, starting now.
In university, I studied Greek and Roman civilization, and I was fascinated by...
Well, Graham Norton speaking as a whistle when gained that extra point. He's moved forward. He's now equal in second place with Stephen Frost. They're trailing Clement Freud a little. And Martin Jarvis, it's your turn to begin. And the subject is too much of a good thing. 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
I played Sir Cosmo Duff Gordon in a big film, and it was called Titanic. 4 days we spent on the dinner scene with real caviar. It was too much of a good thing, because in the 3rd day, instead of going down on the Titanic, we were throwing up on the great ship. It was absolutely extraordinary how terrible our stomachs felt with this hugely expensive beluga that we had to consume day after night, after every single hour of the millennium. I hated those days on the ship. But anyway...
Well, you've triumphed in many theatres, but now you've had one of your greatest triumphs at the Gateway here in Chester. And is it true that nearly everything you did in that film was cut in the end? I don't mean that unkind, you know. This is what happens in films. You get your best role. It's happened to me. It's happened to... You get your best part and so forth, and then they start editing, and they leave the stars in.
In fact, yes, most, as I say in my new book, Acting Strangely, I did spend most of my time throwing up. No, I had a wonderful time, and I think this great part was cut down to about 3 lines, and I'm very happy about it.
Do you know we're entering the last round of this particular edition? Well, I tell you what, if you've enjoyed it so much, maybe we can come back again. After that warm reception, I think we just have to. I'll talk to the powers that be and see what we can do. So whose turn is it to begin? Clement Freud, would you take the last round? It's graffiti. It's a lovely subject. You have 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
I've never quite understood the allure of going into a gentleman's convenience and writing bollocks on the wall. And yet, there are those who continue to do so.
I think that was one occasion when you were quite right to ride the laugh, and not ride the laugh, wait for it and get the full response. But as you paused for about 5 or 10 seconds, Graham got in first, so Graham...
Well, I was just saving himself, because I thought he might remember some more.
Oh, I see, right. Well, what do you remember of your graffiti? I don't mean your personal graffiti, I mean a graffiti you've seen. And there are 39 seconds available, starting now.
Graffiti always sounds to me like an obscure form of pasta. And what a happy day it was when I found alphabeti spaghetti, where you can combine the two arts of...
Martin Jarvis challenge.
Deviation, because pasta has nothing to do with graffiti.
But alphabeti spaghetti sticks to the wall.
What can I say in the face of such expertise?
But also
We've
Martin...
all done it.
Right. But also, Martin, I thought he was conveying the fact that the word graffiti sounded like a type of pasta, which I thought was rather amusing.
It was extremely amusing, yes.
But anyway, it didn't get a laugh, I know, but it was...
But anyway, I kept going.
Incorrect challenge. 29 seconds available, Graham, on graffiti starting now.
Graffiti I have seen that I enjoyed included some writing above a mirror in a men's toilet, for I hadn't strayed too far from where I'm supposed to be, and it said, "Of course you're going home alone," just above the mirror.
Stephen Frost, the mirror, yes, you repeated the mirror. Yes.
Thank God for that.
So, Stephen, you got a correct challenge, and there are 10 seconds available. Tell us something about graffiti, starting now.
I went into a toilet once after Clement Freud had just come out.
And Clement Freud challenge.
Deviation.
Why?
I went into a toilet once.
I think he was establishing the fact that on one occasion...
I thought he'd meant only once.
And, Stephen, you still have the subject of graffiti. 7 seconds available, starting now.
Get a can of spray kit. His microphone's not working properly. It's making all my words come out.
Graham, you've got in first. Deviation from English as we understand it.
Yes.
5 seconds.
Oh, yeah, okay, 5 seconds.
No.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
You want to say something?
No.
Always love to hear from you.
No, 5
always
seconds.
good back.
Let's go. Hey, graffiti, let's talk about it. Come on.
Right. 5 seconds, can you do it? Graffiti. Bring the show to a close, a finish, with a flourish. 5 seconds on graffiti, starting now.
In my school, people
No, Stephen, you challenged.
I think he was hesitating. He was too busy doing the dance.
He certainly wasn't hesitating. He only went for 1.5 seconds. Well, still another point to you, Graham. You've got 3.5 seconds on graffiti, starting now.
I've only once attempted to do any graffiti, but it was...
Martin Jarvis challenged.
Gabbalization.
You're all trying too hard just because of the last few seconds to get this last... It's an incorrect challenge. You have 1 second left on graffiti with you, Graham, starting now. Well, the final round. What can I tell you except that I think it was a great show and everybody here seemed to enjoy it. And an amazing number of points were scored throughout the whole show. Martin Jarvis, who hasn't played the game very much, hasn't been with us for years, actually, but he got a lot of points. He finished only just in 4th place behind Stephen Frost. No, but you did amazing. And you, Stephen, were only 3 points behind Graham Norton and Clement Freud, who finished up with that last flourish of yours, Graham, catching up Clement Freud. So equal together in the lead are winners this week, Graham Norton and Clement Freud. You at home or in your cars or wherever you're listening to this edition of Just a Minute have enjoyed the show as much as we've enjoyed performing it. It only remains me to thank our 4 talented players of the game, Graham Norton, Clement Freud, Martin Jarvis and Stephen Frost. I must thank Janet Staplehurst for helping with the score and blowing her whistle. And also we are indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this game, and our producer Chris Neal for the way he produces and directs and tries to keep some sort of control. And particularly this lovely audience here in Chester who encouraged us on our way at the Gateway Theatre. And from them, from me, Nicholas Parsons, and from all of us here, goodbye. Tune in next time you play Just a Minute. Welcome to Just a Minute. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my pleasure to welcome our listeners in this country and, of course, throughout the world, and also to welcome the 4 individual, distinguished and diverse personalities who this week are going to play Just a Minute. Well, we welcome back a most diverse and individual comedian, a great young star of today, that is Graham Norton, another individual humorous performer, Stephen Frost, a distinguished actor, Martin Jarvis, and also a most individual and erudite personality in Clement Freud. Would you please welcome all 4 of them? And as usual in this show, I am going to ask them to speak for just a minute, if they can, on the subject that I give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviating from the subject. Beside me sits Janet Staplehurst, who's going to help me keep the score, and she will blow a whistle when 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the Gateway Theatre in Chester. We were here a little while ago, and they've asked us back. So, Clement, will you begin today? And the subject is spice. Tell us something about spice in just a minute, starting now.
The root of the word spice is merchandise. It's what people brought back from Java and Sumatra, from the West Indies, from Jamaica, Trinidad, Tobago, Zimbabwe, all those places. And today we seem to think that spice means ginger, arrow, pepper, chili, cumin, caraway, all the things that you add to breads or pastries or curries in order to make them more delicious, stronger, hotter.
Martin Jarvis, you challenged.
Hesitation?
Yeah, definitely hesitation. Yes, he was trying to do all those wonderful listings, which is very clever, but he slipped up there and he hesitated, so that's a point to you, Martin, for a correct challenge. You take over the subject. It is spice. There are 22 seconds available, starting now.
Baby, scary, posh, sporty, and the other one that he's already mentioned. The variety is the life of spice, I suppose you could say. Tommy Trinder, Arthur Askey, Ted Ray, Jimmy Edwards, all added to this wonderful mix down at the Windmill Theatre, where I believe Nicholas Parsons once appeared.
Yes, indeed. I don't know whether clapping my appearance at the Windmill Theatre or the fact that you were speaking as the whistle went, Martin, so you gain a point for doing that, and at the end of that round, you have a commanding lead over everybody else. Anyway, you begin the next round, Martin. Down on your uppers. What a good subject. Speak on it if you can. 60 seconds starting now.
Some would say I was already down on my uppers by appearing on the same stage with Nicholas Parsons, but I would absolutely attack them for that, because Nicholas Parsons is a highly distinguished performer.
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of Nicholas Parsons.
I know.
I don't think you can say the name too often.
No. Yes, some have said that before, but... Down on your uppers, Clement, a correct challenge, and you have 50 seconds available starting now.
When you run short of Viagra pills, you could be said to be down on your uppers. There are other enhancing... The common uppers that people take today are appetite-depressing pills, anything to make you cheerful against the normal nature of your temperament. Uppers at a chemist shop are sold by prescription.
Stephen Frost.
I just think this is a bad influence on any young people who are listening. You're telling them how to take drugs, what drugs to take, and where to get them.
Have you got a challenge within the rules of just a minute?
No, sorry.
Try hesitation.
I haven't got this game yet, have I? No.
Right, you're going to try hesitation.
Hesitation, yes.
It's not a secondary challenge because he challenged first.
You won't try that again, Nicholas.
No.
This won't be pretty, everyone.
No, Stephen, he did actually hesitate. And 20 seconds, down on your uppers with you, Stephen, starting now.
The expression down on your uppers has a very fascinating history. Unfortunately, I don't know it. But I can tell you that when I was a young boy, I was only 5 years old.
Graham Norton.
Was hesitation.
Hesitation, right. We want to hear from you now on Down on Your Upper. 7 seconds available, starting now.
I well remember that unfortunate incident with honey and an old duvet that resulted with much down on my...
So, as I said before, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion it was Graham Norton. Stephen, you begin the next round. Oh, what a lovely subject. Bodice Ripper. Someone's scratching their bodices down there in the audience. That is the subject, Stephen. You have 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
Go into any bookshop in your local high street and you will find on the top shelf a series of bodice rippers. Novels written by people who base the story on sex, lust, and horses, usually. Now, these books sell very well, but frankly, I've read a couple of them, well, several hundred, and I've noticed...
Graham, you challenge.
Well, surely that's repetition, then. Let's face it, the plots don't vary.
It's a repetitious thought, but it's not repeating the words within just a minute. So give Graham a point because his interruption was worthwhile and the audience applaud him. And, Stephen, you get a point because you were interrupted. You keep the subject. 39 seconds available. Bodice ripper starting now.
Usually on the front there's a picture of a lung lady... A lung! If it's one of our doctors, there'll be a picture of it.
Martin, you challenge first.
I think it was hesitation, wasn't it?
I think it was deviation as well. 37 seconds. Bodice rippers with you, Martin, starting now.
A few years ago, I used to appear on Saturday Night Theatre on the Wireless, and there were a series of bodice rippers in which when you kissed the girl, you did this. Darling, I love you.
And it's Graham Norton challenged.
Now, in fairness, repetition.
So, Graham, a correct challenge.
Yes.
Repetition.
All right.
24 seconds. Bodice ripper, starting now.
Bodice Ripper was famously the wife of Jack. She had a terrible time trying to keep her house in order. The curtains were in shreds constantly. It was worse than living with a cat. The sofa covers made her blush. She wouldn't have visitors. No, she would refuse to answer the door.
So Graham Norton then speaking as the Whistlewain gained that extra point. He's now taken a lead ahead of Martin Jarvis and then Clement, Freud and Stephen Frost in that order. And Graham, it's also your turn to begin. And the subject is A Piece of My Mind. 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
Once, when I was young, I misbehaved a little, and my mother gave me a piece of her mind. I keep it in a large bell jar on the mantelpiece.
Martin challenged.
It's a piece of her mind. We want to hear about a piece of his mind.
It is my mind now. She gave it to me.
All right.
No, Martin, he wasn't deviating from the rules of just a minute. So, right. Graham, another point to you. 51 seconds available. A piece of my mind starting now.
I think the people who say things like, I'm going to present to you with a piece of my mind, are usually being very generous indeed. Because they normally don't...
Clement Freud challenged.
Hesitation, beginning, of course.
I don't think he quite hesitated.
It's my accent.
I think he was teetering on the point of hesitation but didn't quite achieve it. And so another point to you, Graham, and 38 seconds, a piece of my mind starting now.
Thanks to the wonders of the mobile phone, a piece of my mind now looks like a bit of sautéed chicken. I imagine I could just peel back my ear and slice it off and eat it. And it probably would taste like that beast I mentioned before. The one with the wings and the beady eyes that looks too stupid to feel sorry for in a battery-type operation. Oh, how I love being here in Chester. My mind is in pieces. I'm so happy. I wonder if any of the cast of Hollyoaks are in tonight. I dream of them. My mind is full of them.
So Graham Norton again kept going to the Whistlewain, gained that extra point and has increased his lead, and I'm surprised I didn't challenge you for deviation, bringing in Chester. Mind you, you can't mention Chester too often, can you? Clement Freud, will you take the next round? The subject is has-beens. 60 seconds as usual, and you start now.
Has-beens is an extraordinary subject to give to a program in which the average age of the contestants is deceased. I believe I would like to give them a piece of my mind, but I missed the last round, so let me talk about has-beens as presumably it was meant to be spoken of. They are climbing leguminous plants that have beans which are known as broad, fresh, mungo, haricot, flat, runner, and sometimes, instead of people sitting on a pavement sending you the big issue, they say, has-beens will travel. Those people, I think, refer to...
Stephen Frost challenge.
Repetition of people there. People selling you big issue.
That's right, and people's on the street. Right, yeah. Well done, well listened. And you've got in with 9 seconds to go, and subject has been starting now.
I was walking along the street and someone said to me, "You're Stephen Frost. Who did you used to be?" And this happens quite a lot, not only to myself, but to fellow performers in this...
So Stephen Frost speaking as the whistle went again, that extra point. He's moved forward. He's now in second place behind Graham Norton, who's in the lead, and then Martin Jarvis and Clement Freud. And Martin, your turn to begin. The subject, Aphrodisiac. Talk on the subject of Aphrodisiac starting now.
I'd like to give you a recipe for an aphrodisiac, which, of course, is a love potion. First, you take some pink champagne, you pour into it Cointreau, apricot brandy, some BBC water, and a strawberry. You mix it all up, and you toss it off.
But, Clement, you challenged.
It's disgusting.
I know it is, but that's not one of the rules of Just a Minute. You can obviously...
I was saving him from himself and his audience.
You have
and
no
his
other...
son, who might have been listening.
Yes. You have no other challenge except disgust. So in that case, Martin, it's an incorrect challenge. You get another point, and you keep the subject, and you have 40 seconds on Aphrodisiac, starting now.
People who have extraordinary minds do not understand what an aphrodisiac is all about. Surely the thing is, you have to pour a kind of...
Clement Freud challenge.
He has already poured.
You have already poured.
I've already poured.
Yeah. You like his aphrodisiac. Maybe it's the way he does it. 32 seconds available. Aphrodisiac with you, Clement, starting now.
In Brittany, I was once sold an oyster which was reputed to have such powers that if you didn't eat it quickly, you got a stiff neck. Now, there is an advantage. What an example of an aphrodisiac. I don't myself believe in the aphrodisiac qualities of food, because for me it is much more important to eat semolina pudding with someone who turns me on than to wallow...
So Clement Freud got the point for speaking as the whistle went, and now he and Martin Jarvis and Stephen Frost are all equal in second place behind our leader Graham Norton. And Stephen, your turn to begin. The subject, a mixed bag. Tell us something about that in just a minute, starting now.
When I look out into the audience and see the faces of the people here, I'd say we'd have a mixed bag. Tall people, short women, older type humanoids, and of course a few children. Definitely a mixed bag, but that makes for a good show, a great atmosphere, and of course a marvellous...
Clement Freud challenge.
Great, we've had, and of course, before.
We've had great, and of course, yes. 39 seconds for you, Clement. A mixed bag starting now.
If you were to go out shooting and you came back with a pheasant, a partridge, a woodcock, and a swallow, that is roughly what is known as a mixed bag. It is a variety of things which you have shot with your gun and put into a container known as a bag, although weighed in a basket or a black plastic bucket, it would also be known as a bag because that's the way things are. But mixed bags is an expression which is also used in respect of audiences, crowds at football matches, people who go to cinema.
With great discipline of mind and ingenuity, Clement Freud struggled on to the whistle when gained that extra point, and he's moved forward into second place ahead of Martin Jarvis and Stephen Frost, but still trailing Graham Norton. And Clement, it's your turn to begin. The subject, the city walls. Clement, that is the subject. Talk on it. 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
The city walls were built very many years ago in order to stop people getting out of Chester. It was simply a case that They were racing away to Manchester, Liverpool, Nuneaton, Tamworth, you name it.
Graham.
No, you wouldn't go to Nuneaton. This is better than Nuneaton. Even now.
Graham, we give you the subject. 41 seconds available. The city walls starting now.
I did admire the city walls of Chester today, but a question struck me. Where were the city skirting boards? Where were the city cornices? Don't you watch changing rooms? Can't you buy stencils in this fine town, which is in fact a city? We all know that. Don't go on. I thought to myself, surely in a city where it's easier to buy a crystal and a packet of potpourri than a pint of milk, you could find a stencil. I've said stencil again. I'll say it again because they're supposed to be repeated. That's how you create a pattern.
Right. Clement challenged you just before the end.
He repeated stencil.
Oh, did I? Oh, yeah.
Clement, a correct challenge. 1 second on the city wall starting now.
Time the whistle blew.
Did I say 1 minute instead of 1 second? Because it was the longest second I've ever heard, if it was.
A fine round that was.
Yes. Well, Janet said, well, I completely confused her. She sits beside me, listeners, and I looked at her and she took a whistle out of her mouth. Which,
Dear diary.
Let's carry on with just a minute. Stephen Frost, it's your turn to begin. The subject, oh, what a lovely one. The kiss of life. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
Make sure the body is in the correct position. Flat on the floor, with the head held back, no tongue blocking the throat. Pinch the top of the nose with your forefinger and thumb, and blow gently. This way, the air will flow into the lungs of the person who we are giving the kiss of life, and hopefully they will come back to life. Unless, of course, you don't want them to, then suck heavily. Make sure that your hands are kept in the correct positions, maintaining the textbook...
Martin Jarvis, you've challenged.
I really hesitate myself to challenge such a brilliant example of how we should all behave in times of emergency.
What, sucking?
No, it was a brilliant display of exactly what we should all be doing.
Yes.
But nevertheless, there was some hesitation.
Yeah, there was a hesitation. So, Martin, you have a correct challenge. You have another point, of course, and 26 seconds on the kiss of life, starting now.
I endorse what Stephen Frost was just saying. I have been given...
Graham Norton challenge.
But that has to be repetition, then.
What? No. It is words that matter in just a minute, not the thoughts. So he was endorsing it. He said he endorsed it, but he didn't repeat any words.
No.
Yet.
Oh, keen, right. Martin, another point to you for an incorrect challenge. The kiss of life is still with you.
That well-known actor, Roy Marsden, gave this thing to me in a film, and unfortunately he had to put his mouth over mine about 7 times because it took that long to get the shot. It was great in one sense, but embarrassing next to him at lunch because I felt I knew him better than I knew him before.
The Clement Freud challenge.
2 News.
I knew him...
Yeah,
yes, and I knew him before. So, Clement, a correct challenge. You have 6 seconds. You tell us something about the kiss of life, starting now.
Ideally, the person to whom you give the kiss of life should be fairly close to death.
So Clement Freud was then speaking as a whistleway, gained that extra point, and he has moved forward. Martin Jarvis, your turn to begin. The subject, oh, what a nice one, non-stick pans. Tell us something about non-stick pans in this game, starting now.
Well, non-stick pans are much more efficient than pans made of sticks that you can only get in Nuneaton, for instance, sell those sorts of pots, and they're really no good at all. They don't get burnt, the soup doesn't fall through the gap. Non-stick pans are the things you should use to make eggs over easy, which I particularly enjoy, because you do need to have just a slippery little way of making these wonderful pieces of...
He burst into song.
That's how I feel about eggs ovaries.
Yeah. 33 seconds, Stephen, for you to tell us something about non-stick pans, starting now.
They say that non-stick pans came about from the great space race from America, which is, I find, is a bit pointless because you don't need the eggs to stick to the pan when you're in space because of gravity. They're not going to in the first place. So I think that's a bit of a lie put out by NASA, which, as we all know, stands for National Aeronautic Space Association. Maybe. But, of course, I've said that again.
Graham, you challenge.
Did I?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I did. Lots of courses.
Of course, yes, right. And in this case, you have 10 seconds. You have non-stick pans, starting now.
Non-stick pans are covered in something called Teflon. Bill Clinton is often referred to as the Teflon president because nothing...
Clement, Freud, Jarvis.
Repetition of Teflon.
Teflon.
Yes.
You had Teflon there. Clement, another point to you, and another... Once again, you've got in with 3 seconds to go. Non-stick pans, starting now.
Peter Pan's uncle was called non-stick.
Clement Freud, speaking as the whistle when gained that extra point for doing so, and with the other points he gained in the round, he's moved forward. He's now 1 ahead of Graham Norton in the lead, followed by Stephen Frost and Martin Jarvis in that order. And Stephen Frost, your turn to begin. And the subject, passing the buck. Tell us something about that in this game, starting now.
Wasn't me. I sacrificed my point there. The humour.
You just come here to get laughed. You don't bother about that again, do you?
As soon as I get it, I'm off.
Clement, yes, hesitation. So you have 56 seconds on passing the buck, starting now.
Passing the buck is a Republican phrase for people who do not recognize the authority of Her Majesty the Queen. They walk down the Mall, and when they see Buckingham Palace, they pass the buck. To hell with royalty, they say, pass the buck. And in fact, it is making someone else responsible for whatever action or lack thereof they indulge in.
Graham Norton challenge.
I was just punctuating it.
I know.
It seemed to be a full stop. I thought I'd signal it.
So you tell us something about passing the buck, Graham, with 28 seconds available, starting now.
Buck is another word for dollar, which is a way of saying old rubbish 70s group. They weren't so much passed as abandoned. Who knows what happened to them? I can't imagine what they're doing right now. Perhaps a little washing up, some light television reading, writing a letter, reading a good book.
Stephen Frost, a challenge.
Repetition of reading.
Yes, there's a bit too much reading there. So, Stephen, you've listened well. You've got 4 seconds to tell us a joke or talk on the subject. Passing the buck, starting now.
Passing the buck is what female rabbits do after they finish mating.
So, Stephen Frost is speaking as a whistle when, gain an extra point for doing so. And we're moving into the last round. Alas, the subject is raspberries. But it's a good subject to talk about, isn't it? And talk on. And who begins it? Graham Norton, it's your turn to begin. Tell us something about raspberries. I don't know how much they figure in your life, but talk on it. 60 seconds now.
While backpacking in India, I stumbled upon a guru. He asked me a very solemn question. What's pink and hairy and goes up and down? The answer, of course, is a raspberry in a lift. Raspberries are small fruits with quite a lot of hair on them, and thus I feel a strange affinity to them. As a schoolboy, we went raspberry picking. You're too late to save me now, kind audience. My sister and myself weren't paid very much in those hot fields.
Clement Freud has challenged you.
Deviation.
Why?
Grammatical.
What?
My sister and I.
Oh.
No, I've always wanted to know that. I'm thrilled.
I think the only fair thing to do is to give Clement Freud a point for the fact that it was a legitimate challenge in the sense that it was accurate, but also be very unfair to take the subject away from Graham.
Yes.
So he gets a point for being interrupted. He keeps the subject. 18 seconds. Raspberries.
I think you'll be getting it very soon.
Raspberries starting now.
Raspberries are wonderful fruits, and I don't...
Stephen Frost, challenge.
Repetition of fruit.
You had the fruit before, yes.
Oh, yes, I did.
Yes. Stephen!
Drifted into a sense memory.
Yeah. You have 13 seconds to tell us something about raspberries in this game, starting now. Martin, you can. Go on.
I don't know how you would spell that, but I think it's a repetition of...
So, Martin, we're going to hear from you on raspberries, and there are 9 seconds available, starting now.
In America, a raspberry is known as a Bronx cheer. I don't know why that should be so, but all I can tell you is it's a wonderful way of...
So Martin Jarvis, speaking as the Whistlewain, gained that extra point, and in doing so, he has moved forward and is equal with Stephen Frost in third place. And just out, well, not just out, a little way out in front of them were our two leaders, but 1 point separated them. Graham Norton was 1 point behind Clement Freud, so this week we say, Clement Freud, you're the winner. So it only remains for me to say thank you to our 4 intrepid and talented players of the game, Graham Norton, Clement Freud, Martin Jarvis and Stephen Frost. Also thank Janet Staplehurst for helping with the score and blowing her whistle. And also we are indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this game. We thank our producer, Chris Neal, for all his contribution to the show. And we are delighted to thank our audience here in Chester, who've encouraged us on our way in such a warm and friendly and courteous way. And so from the people of Chester, from my panel and from me, Nicholas Parsons, thank you very much for tuning in. Be with us the next time we play Just a Minute. Till then, goodbye. Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my pleasure to welcome our many listeners throughout the world, and also to welcome the 4 diverting and diverse personalities who this week have joined me to play Just a Minute. We welcome back with tremendous pleasure that popular and original comedian Julian Clary, the talented comedy performer with her own original style, Linda Smith, an original in every sense of the word, and an original member of the Just a Minute team, that is Clement Freud. And we welcome someone who's never played the game before. From the legitimate theatre, an actor, Simon Williams. Would you please welcome all 4 of them? And as usual, I'm going to ask them to speak on a subject that I will give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviating from the subject. Beside me sits Janet Staplehurst, who's going to help me keep a score and blow a whistle when 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the Britannia Royal Naval College in Dartmouth. And we have before us here a wonderful naval audience. They are going to cheer us on our way, so let us now pull anchor and sail forth into Just a Minute as we begin the show with Clement Freud. And Clement, how apt for this show from a naval college, casting off. Will you tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now?
Casting off is a cinematographic term.
And Julian is challenged already.
Did you trip over a word there?
Yes, I call that hesitation.
Hesitation. And do you really expect me not to deviate? That's my bread and butter. That's how I earn a living.
You've captivated the audience already, Julian. Julian, you have a correct challenge, so you get a point for that, of course. You take over the subject. You have 57 seconds available, and it is now still casting off, starting now.
Casting off, as I understand it, is a knitting term.
Linda Smith has challenged you.
Well, interestingly there, Julian, you weren't deviating, but you were hesitating, which isn't like you.
I know.
I was simply pausing for breath.
So Linda has a point. She takes over the subject, casting off, 51 seconds, starting now.
Casting off has a theatrical meaning. It means when the casting is a little bit off in a film or play. For example, if you were to see a show and it was called Simon Williams is Arthur Mullard in the biopic of that name, then...
Right, Simon, you have challenged.
She was hoisted on her own petard.
So what is your challenge?
Hesitation.
Hesitation, yes. That would be sufficient.
A bad piece of casting as well.
And you have your first chance to cast off in just a minute as you talk on the subject, and there are 36 seconds available starting now.
It is indeed something an actor lives for, to be cast. And when an agent calls and tells us that we have...
Julian, yes.
Hesitation.
Yes, a stumble there, which we interpret as hesitation in this game. Julian, casting off is back with you. 29 seconds available starting now.
My mother once produced a jumper with 3...
Another hesitation, 25 seconds available, Clement. Casting off, starting now.
A director would say, not Demi Moore, nor Jodie Foster. We will certainly not fail to cast.
Simon Williams' challenge.
Did we have a repetition of not there?
No, there was not.
No.
It was very keen, but it wasn't a correct challenge.
It was the thought of Demi Moore put me off my stride.
An incorrect challenge on this occasion, so a point to the man who's speaking in this case, Clement Freud. Clement, you have 15 seconds still available. Casting off, starting now.
During the war, it was very important to knit, and everybody who didn't fight in the Army, the Navy, or the Air Force had to do something useful. I had a cotton reel with 4 nails stuck into it, and had a sort of lever which was called a needle.
Whoever is speaking when the whistle is blown gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Clement Freud, and at the end of that round, he has a lead of 1 over all the others, who also have 2 points. So he's 3, they're 2. And Linda, we'd like you to take the next round. The subject, name-dropping. Tell us something about that in this game, starting now.
Name-dropping. Name-dropping is a ridiculous and pathetic practice. Done by...
Julian, you've challenged.
She hesitated.
She did indeed, yes. There's some early hesitations in this show this week. 54 seconds available. Name droppings with you, Julian, starting now.
If I was chatting to some sailors in the local bar and I slipped into the conversation the word Leslie Joseph, she's a very close personal show business friend, then that would be a fine example of name dropping. And that's all I have to say.
Yes, that was a hesitation. Linda's got the subject back again. 41 seconds, name-dropping Linda, starting now.
Some silly people try to make themselves seem more important than they actually are by dropping the names of illustrious personages into conversations, as if these beings were in fact close personal friends. It's ridiculous, as I was saying to Robert De Niro just the other day, when he was round my house having a cup of tea with Dame Judi Dench. Lovely Judy, she is a darling.
And Clement Freud challenged.
2 Judys.
There were 2 Judys.
Yeah. Can there be too many?
No. You maybe can't have enough of Judi Dench, but if you repeat her name in just a minute, it's repetition, and 16 seconds is for you, Clement, with another point on name-dropping starting now.
I was at a Buckingham Palace garden party and was presented to Her Majesty the Queen, and I turned to Edward Heath, who was talking to Alec Douglas Hume, and I said, I do hate name-droppers, and also people who won't blow the whistle when you've spoken for 60 seconds.
Clement Freud was then cleverly speaking as the whistle went and gained that extra point for doing so. And Simon Williams, it's your turn to begin. The subject is pet hates. 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
Canaries, budgerigars, chihuahuas, tortoises, quite a lot of ducks are among my pet hates. A number of these animals, that was the hesitation that I managed to get through without being challenged.
Linda, you challenged.
Yes, you nearly got away with that, but then you just got too confident. Yeah.
And you drew attention to your hesitation. Linda challenged, and she has pet hates, and she has 47 seconds starting now.
A pet hate of mine is my own habit of buying shoes that don't actually fit. They are the wrong size, a bit too small, rather large. Ah, you pinch now, I think, but I'll tame you, my proud beauties. But no, they don't get tamed. They kill my feet, and I develop horrible great blisters.
Julian challenged.
We've had 2 feet.
We have, but that is normal in a biped.
That is true, Linda, but if you repeat it, then in just a minute you have broken one of the rules, and Julian got in first, and 26 seconds are available. Julian, pet hates starting now.
Leslie Joseph could be considered a pet hate of mine. She's charming.
Linda, you challenge.
Well, he's very two-faced. Just now she was a close showbiz person.
So you're going to call that deviation, are you?
I think so. She can't be both. I mean, even in this crazy biz.
It's a difficult decision because on the basis that you could say what you like as long as you keep going, and but he did establish that she was a personal friend before, didn't he? And
for goodness sake.
I think in the show business sense he was having a bit of fun at the expense of one of his chums, so I don't think I should give it against him, Linda. So you have a point for an incorrect challenge. Julian, you have 21 seconds on pet hates starting now.
We have a love-hate relationship. In a way, I adore her, and she comes round to my house for tea every Thursday afternoon at about 4 o'clock. But in another way, I find her slightly irritating because she always turns up at these show business events, flings her arms around me when the cameras are being taking pictures, and I don't necessarily want the general public to know about me and...
So Julian Clary, with points in the round as well as one for speaking as the whistle went, has moved forward, and he's now in the lead, 1 ahead of Clement Freud, 2 ahead of Linda Smith, and 3 ahead of Simon Williams in that order, for anyone who's interested in the score. Julian, will you take the next round? Stretching my legs. Simon's challenged already.
He was obviously hesitating there, trying to work out how to get Leslie Joseph into stretching her legs.
I don't think I'll need to call upon Leslie on this occasion.
No, right. Now, I hadn't actually given him the word to start. I always say start now, Simon. I was just, I'm sure that Julian's got a beautiful pair of pins to stretch, but would you talk on the subject, Julian? 60 seconds, starting now.
I like to stretch my legs on a regular basis. The wider, the better. In fact, unbeknownst to the audience of naval officers and hopefuls in front of us now, I am, in fact, stretching my legs as we speak. The other day, I was very busy stretching my legs, and do you know, gentlemen, and the few ladies that have slipped through the net, I did, in fact, pull a muscle. His name was Mary. It's actually very important, and I suggest that everyone here present joins a yoga class, and then they will understand the benefits of stretching your legs. My left leg I can put over my right ear, twist round my neck, and tuck under my armpit.
Clement Freud has challenged you.
Repetition of leg.
Yes, you have the single leg, and its legs is on the card. Yes. I think you won a few friends down there. Yes, they want to hear more about your legs, actually. But, Clement, it was a correct challenge, so within the rules of just a minute, I must give it to you. You tell us something about stretching my legs. 12 seconds, starting now.
In health clubs and gymnasia, you tend to find charts which correlate your weight and your height. And I find that for someone of 15 stone, I should be...
Simon Williams, who challenged.
It's a miserable challenge, but he did repeat yaw.
We don't usually bother with the yaws.
It was a desperate move. I'm
but
terribly
as it
sorry.
is a correct challenge, I have to be fair within the rules of just a minute, Simon, and there's half a second to go. So you cleverly got in. With half a second on, stretching my legs, starting now.
Following...
So at the end of that round, Simon Williams, speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point. He's now equal in second place with Linda Smith, and out in the lead are Clement Freud and Julian Clary, both equal. And Clement, your turn to begin. The subject, board games. Tell us something about those in this game, starting now.
Shuffleboard is probably the only board game which people of Dartmouth are familiar with. On any ocean-going liner, ship, even sailing boat, there's nothing that is more fun than the board game in which you use a broom or some similar device to propel a target.
Julian, you challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, because he thought he wasn't making sense, so he decided to stop so... Well, he hesitated. 39 seconds, Julian. Board games with you starting now.
I've very little time for board games. I think if you've got nothing to say to one another, then you might as well drop down dead and die. Board games are an excuse for conversation. The only one I've ever enjoyed was Monopoly, and then I like nothing more than to park myself on Park Lane.
Clement Freud challenge.
Two parks.
Two parks. Park yourself
I'm
in
obsessed with parks.
Yes. 21 seconds, Clement. Board games starting now.
I prefer Snakes and Ladders to Halma, chess, and backgammon. The wonderful thing about throwing a dice and determining whether you're to go up or come down and have such huge enjoyment at the expense of everyone else is something I cannot recommend sufficiently, like going...
Clement Freud was then speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point. He's moved forward. He's just in a small lead. And Linda Smith, your turn to begin. The subject, the battle of the sexes. Tell us something about that in just a minute, starting now.
The Battle of the Sexes was meant to have happened in 1873, but actually took place in 1874 because us ladies were too busy getting ready. Outside, the men were saying, "Oh, hurry up, aren't you done yet?" And we said, "Oh, stop nagging. While you're standing out there waiting for the battle, why don't you make yourself useful and take the rubbish out?" "But I'm all dressed up for the battle. Oh, we're going to miss it. Oh, it's going to be over in half an hour. Oh, let's go shopping instead then. Oh, I'm not going shopping." And Nick.
Simon Williams challenge.
We did have two lots of shopping there.
Yes,
I know it's popular, but...
Yes. A repetition of shopping, Simon. You've got in, and there are 26 seconds available, and it is the Battle of the Sexes starting now.
The Battle of the Sexes presumably started with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and has been carried on and the war thoroughly waged ever since. The trouble with this particular battle is that people on both sides of this terrible divide are forever fraternizing with the enemy.
Julian, you challenge.
Didn't say that word quite correctly, enemy. Hesitation.
Julian, a correct challenge. 9 seconds, the Battle of the Sexes, starting now.
I once enjoyed a battle of the sexes in a hotel room in Amsterdam. On the left-hand twin bed was my friend Vera.
So Julian Clary getting points in that round, including one for speaking as the whistle went, has moved forward. He's now one ahead of Clement Freud and Simon Williams and Linda Smith in that order. And Simon, your turn to begin. The subject, very apt, neighbour one, old sea dogs. There are mostly young sea dogs here, I think, in the audience, but talk on the subject of old sea dogs, starting now.
If the old sea dogs, perhaps the younger people... Oh...
Julian challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, there was.
Such a good joke I had lined up for you, Julian, there.
Well, we'll have it later. We'll have it later. Don't worry. We never throw anything away here. 56 seconds. Old sea dogs with you, Julian, starting now.
Old seaman. That is what an old sea dog is. Generally, though, old sea dogs are very wise gentlemen. All they have to do is stick an extremity out of a porthole and they can tell you what you're going to have for tea.
Oh, Linda, you've challenged.
Well, I just felt that Julian came to a sort of natural end there.
I peaked.
The audience were laughing so much I didn't even hear it stopped, actually. Anyway, a correct challenge to Linda, and she has old sea dogs. She has got the subject of old sea dogs, and there are 26 seconds starting now.
I used to, as a child, have to go and visit with the rest of my school the old sea dogs in the Royal Alfred Old Seaman's Home, very near to that place of education. At Christmas time, we would take them little gifts of tobacco and pipes, whether they smoked or not. It was a bit of an assumption on our part, but I was a little frightened of them.
So Linda Smith was Speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point. She's moved forward, she's still in third place, and Julian Clary, your turn to begin. The subject, this is an interesting one, whiplash. I don't know if you have any personal revelations, but talk on the subject if you can in 60 seconds, starting now.
There's a gay club in Torquay called the Whiplash, where people stand around wearing rubber because they enjoy that sort of thing. And if you're very lucky, especially on a Thursday night, from what I hear, someone will come through the swing doors with a whip under their arm, bend you over the bar.
Clement Freud challenge.
Deviation.
Why? It was certainly deviation from life as most of us know it. But it wasn't actually deviating from the subject. So what I'll do is, Clement, because we all enjoyed the challenge...
saving him from himself.
I will give you a bonus point because the audience reaction proved that they enjoyed your interjection, so we got a bonus point for that. But Julian was interrupted, so he gets a point for interruption, and he keeps the subject of whiplash. And with trepidation we say, Julian, please continue. 43 seconds available, starting now.
The Whiplash Bar is particularly popular with radio listeners. They queue around the block, and in fact, if you're over 55, you get a discount and a free baby sham thrown in. I was last there several years ago, and I must say I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I climbed up the walls at midnight, trying to get away from someone who was pursuing me with a particularly vigorous thrashing motion going on. And in the end, I climbed out a window and...
Clement Freud challenge.
2 climbs.
You climbed too much, I'm afraid, Julian. But did you escape? That's what we want to know.
He still writes.
Clement, at last you got in on whiplash, and you have 11 seconds, starting now.
In a gay club in Paynton, I met an extraordinarily nice woman who took me to a pub called the Cat and Cucumber. And I can...
So Clement Freud speaking as the whistle went has moved forward again, and he's now equal with Julian Clary in the lead. Linda, it's your turn to begin, and the subject, chattering classes, starting now.
Chattering classes. Chattering classes are not, as you might think, lessons in going, how are you, all right, all mustn't grumble, but rather a group of middle-class people, probably Islington-based, who spend their time worrying and fretting about trivial things like whether the Teletubbies will have a bad effect on their wretched children, little Flymo and Mezzanine's educational development. These type of folk tend to do silly things like having the wheel and little toilet roll tube in their hamster's cage feng shui'd.
Simon.
I have a suspicion that she hesitated and was losing her way anyway.
I lost my way a long time ago, Simon.
She lost her way, but she didn't hesitate over the words. They were flowing out quite consistently.
I withdraw.
So, Linda, you have another point in the chattering classes, starting now.
Good Lord.
Clement Freud challenge.
He did repeat little.
Yeah, but that was before the last challenge. Since then, she only said, good Lord. So, another point to Linda. 21 seconds.
I would like another offence to be taken into account then. I think in the first round I said and twice.
I know you did indeed, but we've let you get away with all those things. 21 seconds on chattering classes, Linda, starting now.
Chattering classes would not be necessary for my fellow panellists here, especially our chairman, Nicholas Parsons, who has demonstrated this evening an ability to chatter on quite interminably, to the extent that I'm actually very confused about what I'm actually meant to be speaking about.
Clement, yes.
2 actually.
The actuallys there will definitely emphasise that. So, Clement, you've got him with 2 seconds on chattering classes. It's part of the game. 2 seconds, Clement, starting now.
Actually, it's time to blow the whistle.
So Clement Freud is now in a small lead ahead of Julian Clary and then Linda Smith and Simon Williams in that order. And Simon, your turn to begin. The subject, busybodies. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
When I think of busybodies, my mind goes happily to the idea of Les Dawson, who, when he was in drag, would impersonate a busybody. That is to say, he would stand and chatter inconsequentially across a garden hedge or fence to his neighbour about inconsequentialities in a gossiping Thank you.
Couldn't remember what they were chattering about, so hesitation. Julian, you got in first. 36 seconds, busybodies, starting now.
I'm a busybody, which is to say I like to keep my body busy. If I'm not down the gym, then I'm mincing around a place called London, which you may have heard of. There's so much to do there to keep one's body busy. You could go to the cinema, you can go to the shops, and can you believe it? They're open 24 hours. They really don't. There's not enough time to sleep some days.
Linda, you challenged.
There was a little bit of a melding of words into each other there.
We call that hesitation. All right, Linda, you have busybodies. 13 seconds, starting now.
Busybodies. It is indeed very important to have a busybody because the devil finds work for idle bodies, as I'm sure Julian will be
Julian, you actually got in half a second before the whistle went. So what was your challenge?
Well, hesitation and defamation.
She did actually hesitate. So you've half a second, Julian, on busybodies, starting now. So Julian Clary getting points in that round, including one for speaking as the whistle went. In the meantime, let's go into the last round of this particular edition of Just a Minute, which will start with Julian Clary, and the subject, very apt for this naval cottage here, sea shanties. Tell us something about sea shanties, Julian, starting now.
It's a subject with which I'm not particularly familiar, although I will try and drag it out to 1 minute. I was once shanted at sea, which I suppose would qualify me as being a sea shanty. Sailor's hornpipe is the only sea shanty that I've ever heard of, and I couldn't hum it to you, and I couldn't sing it to you, I couldn't even...
Linda challenged.
To use?
Yes, couldn't sing it to you, couldn't hum it to you. 36 seconds, Linda. You tell us something about sea shanties, starting now.
My favourite sea shanty is In the Navy by the Village People, a popular beat combo that I'm sure are very big news around this neck of the wood. In the Navy it goes, and then I'm not quite sure of the rest of the words, but I'm sure they're excellent because...
Clement Freud challenge.
2 shores.
There were 2 shores, yes. So Clement, you got in with 19 seconds to go. You tell us something about sea shanties, starting now.
I've never met anyone who was particularly concerned about the goings-on of inebriated matellows. And yet, if you go to a pub, they sing What Shall We Do with a Drunken Sailor, as if anyone cared. And then they repeat it and do it over again.
So Clement Freud brought that round to a close and has brought the show to a close with a resounding reaction from the audience with his comments. Spoke as a whistle went, gained that extra point. So it only remains me to give you the final score. Simon Williams, who has not played the game before, finished in a very strong 4th place. He was only a few points behind Linda Smith, who was just 2 points behind Julian Clary, who gave his usual incredible performance. But he was trailing Clement Freud by 2 points. So Clement in the lead. We say you are the winner this week. We do hope that you have enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. It only remains me to thank these 4 fine players of the game, Linda Smith, Julian Clary, Clement Freud and Simon Williams. I must also thank Janet Staplehurst, who's helping me keep the score. She's blown a whistle when the 60 seconds was up, and our producer-director, Chris Neal. And, of course, we are indebted to Ian Messiter, who originally created Just a Minute, and we are indebted to this audience here at the Tanya Royal Naval College of Dartmouth, who have cheered us on our way. We've enjoyed playing to you. We hope you've enjoyed the show. From the audience, from the panel, from me, Nicholas Parsons, goodbye. Tune in the next time you play Just a Minute. Till then, goodbye. Welcome to Just a Minute. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my infinite pleasure to welcome not only our listeners throughout the world, but also the 4 talented and individual performers who've joined me this week to play Just a Minute. We are delighted to welcome back the completely individual and highly talented Julian Clary, and sitting beside him, an individual and talented comedy performer, Linda Smith. And on my right, facing the audience, someone who is a true individual in every sense of the word, including when he plays Just a Minute, that is Clement Freud. And our 4th guest, an individual actor from the world of theatre, Simon Williams. Would you please welcome all 4 of them? Beside me sits Janet Staplehurst, who is going to help me keep the score and blow whistle when 60 seconds is up. And as usual, I'm going to ask our 4 panellists to speak individually, of course, on the subject that I give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviating from the subject. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the Britannia Royal Naval College at Dartmouth. And we have in front of us a true naval audience representing all branches of the Navy, with a lot of civilians thrown in amongst them as well for small measure. And they're going to cheer us on our way as we start the show this week with Simon Williams. So, Simon, what a subject for a fella to take for starters. Powdering my nose.
Oh.
Tell us something about powdering my nose in Just a Minute, starting now.
Well, powdering my nose is, to my mind, a euphemism. We English people like to have euphemisms for different things, rather like we have a euphemism for sweating, which is euphemism.
Challenge first.
3 euphemisms.
Yes, he repeated euphemism. So, Linda, you have a correct challenge. You get a point for that. You take over the subject. You have 50 seconds available. Powdering my nose, starting now.
When my auntie used to say, I'm just going to powder my nose, I used to be confused because I didn't realise that she actually meant something else. How many times does that woman need to powder her nose, I used to think? She'll end up looking like Coco the Clown.
Julian Clary.
She thinks.
Yes, used to think. So, Julian, you have a correct challenge, and you have a point for that, and you have the subject of powdering my nose. You have 34 seconds. Starting now.
As has already been established, the term powdering my nose has several meanings. The general, the specific, and the euphemistic. The specific would mean the application...
Clement Freud challenge.
2 specifics.
There were 2 specifics, yes. Difficult. You have 8 seconds. Powdering my nose, starting now.
I am going to see a man about a dog. Would you like to wash your hands?
Julian Clary challenge.
He's deviating.
Yes, the subject is powdering my nose. He gave us 2 other euphemisms, and this time you have got in. With 2 seconds to go on powdering my nose, Julian, starting now.
At the Groucho Club in a place...
In this game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point, and on this occasion it was Julian Clary who is in the lead ahead of Clement Freud and Linda Smith and Simon Williams in that order. Clement Freud, would you please take the next round? And what a subject. Anti-disestablishmentarianism. Can you talk? Can you actually say it? I mean, this is going to be the challenge, isn't it? 60 seconds starting now.
I always learnt that the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog was a sentence which involved every vowel and consonant of the English language, and that anti-disestablishmentarianism was the longest word in the dictionary. Now, there are obviously longer...
Simon Williams, you challenged.
I think there was a hesitation
There was a hesitation, yes, Simon. So you've gone in with the correct challenge. You have 40 seconds. Can you tell us something about anti-disestablishmentarianism starting now?
Contrary to public belief, I don't think that anti-disestablishmentarianism is the longest word in the English dictionary. The word that is longest, the lengthiest word, that is to say, in the Oxford Dictionary, is in fact smiles.
Julian Clary challenged.
Repetition of Oxford.
And dictionary, yes.
And dictionary.
It's difficult, isn't it? 26 seconds for you, Julian. You tell us something about anti-disestablishmentarianism starting now.
It's one of those meaningless phrases that you might...
Clement Freud challenge.
It is full of meaning.
What a difficult decision to make, because maybe to Julian it doesn't, it hasn't much meaning at all, but to you, Clement...
Meaningless means it has no meaning, and disestablishment is divorcing the right of the Prime Minister to make appointments in the church.
I think you've convinced me, Clement.
Thank you.
I was about to explain why it had no meaning.
Oh, that's another problem, isn't it? Right. I think I must be just here and give the balance in favour of Clement Freud, and I always redress the balance if I have an opportunity later. Say, Clement, a correct challenge, 24 seconds, anti-disestablishmentarianism, starting now.
Anti-disestablishmentarianism is what gives Her Majesty the Queen the right to interfere in politics of the Church, and I'm against it.
Julian challenge.
I don't think it is.
I don't think the word just gives her the personal right to do it. She could be involved if anti-disestablishmentarianism came into existence.
Would you like to redress the balance, like you said,
You took the very words out of my mouth. I am redressing the balance and giving the benefit of the doubt to you, Julian, and giving you 14 seconds. Not giving you. You have 14 seconds. Anti-disestablishmentarianism starting now.
It's a ridiculous word that I'm not even going to attempt to get my tongue around.
Clement Freud challenge.
I don't think it is.
There I heartily disagree with you, Clement. I think it is a ridiculous word. It's a difficult word too. Julian, I think it was an incorrect challenge. You have another point. Anti-disestablishmentarianism starting now.
You might hear it one day, possibly, perchance, on the South Bank show. I personally couldn't even...
Linda challenged.
I don't think you would. It's gone very down market, the sound.
I think you might hear it anywhere. You could hear it on the South Bank show, so within the rules of just a minute, I couldn't give it against Julian. So, Julian, you're leaping ahead, and you have only 1 second on this subject starting now.
I couldn't even spell it.
So once again, Julian Clary was speaking as the whistle went, gained an extra point for doing so, and has got a commanding lead at the end of the round, and Julian begins the next round. The subject, the English Riviera. Tell us something about that in this game, Julian, starting now.
The English Riviera is the part of our country where the temperature never drops below 70 degrees, even in the midst of winter. In fact, here we are in January, and sitting before me are 700 naval officers wearing thongs. Some of them are a little bit snug, gentlemen, can I just say? But that's Riviera life for you. Out there on the streets, there's palm trees everywhere. In fact, I really don't know why people bother to go abroad, if indeed they're going abroad for the sunshine.
Linda, you challenge.
To abroad.
Yes, you've been abroad too much, Julian. So, Linda, you've got him with 28 seconds. You tell us something about the English Riviera, starting now.
The English Riviera. It's a little-known fact that the English Riviera, Devon...
Oh, that's right.
Finger slipped.
It was a slip.
Oh, incorrect challenge, extra point.
Yes. It might have been a Freudian slip, but I'll do anything for a laugh, don't worry. But if you're interrupted, Linda, that counts as an interruption, and you get a point for that, and you keep the subject English Riviera, 23 seconds, starting now.
The English Riviera, Devon, is in fact the spiritual home of reggae music. Hence, Bob Marley's famous hit number, Exeter, Movement of Jar People, which was about the terrible traffic jams that you get in this part of the world during the holiday season. Did you know...
So Linda Smith was then speaking as the whistle went and brought that round to an end with a great flourish which the audience enjoyed. Clement, will you take the next round? Oh, a nice naval subject. Well, you can take it any way you wish, actually, in this show. Crow's Nest. Tell us something about Crow's Nest in just a minute, starting now.
People who are in the army have crow's feet, whereas those who are in the navy have a crow's nest, which is usually uppermost, and has 5, 6, even 7 people looking out for other ships or land, because in the days of Crow's Nest there were no binoculars. poor sods were shot up into the air, closed their eyes, squinted towards the horizon, and then sang What Shall We Do with a Drunken Sailor, or other similar sea shanties which were hugely popular in the 16th and 17th centuries when there wasn't a lot else to do on a sailing boat than sing.
Linda, you've challenged.
Hesitation.
Yeah. Oh, it took a long time. Yeah. I mean, I think this is the sad thing about this. There's somebody who worked for 45 seconds magnificently on the subject, did all the hard work. He'll probably finish up with no points in this round. Linda comes in with 15 seconds to go. Hesitation, and it is Crow's Nest with you, Linda, starting now.
I wonder...
Simon...
I think I was a hesitation.
I
You
think
should go
it
back
was.
to Clay, yeah.
No, it doesn't. Okay, so you have won it legitimately on a hesitation, Simon. So it was 2 seconds she went without speaking. Right.
Simon, you're a charity case, accept it.
I'm actually the first person who's come on the show and immediately challenged and offering the subject to somebody else, Simon.
Well,
no, you won the subject. Take it. 13 seconds.
all right.
Crow's Nest, starting now. Clement Freud challenged.
Hesitation.
No, indeed not. He just gone, but it's Linda.
I suggest it was. It's exactly what I did.
No.
True.
I've got a clock in front of me, a watch, I'm so sorry. 2 seconds you didn't speak for. It was,
That was while you were speaking. That would have been rude.
No, I say now, and we press the little nipple here on the...
You see, now
the
that is why
stopwatch.
you can't concentrate on the game.
So he's all right. He has 12 seconds on the Crow's Nest starting now.
From the lofty position at the top of a mast, a mariner can see for a considerable distance. What he sees in the distance may...
Julian Carey challenge.
2 C's.
There were too many...
C and C's.
Yes, it's still the word C. It's how you hear it. Whether it's SEA or SEE doesn't matter.
Oh, no, he said see a considerable distance, what he sees.
I'm thrilled with this charity. That is great. I'm going to win.
I think you're right, actually, Clement. I think he did. Who's challenged? Linda.
Just could anybody take Simon in for Christmas dinner next year? He's got nowhere to go.
Right. 5 seconds, Simon. Crow's Nest, starting now.
What might be seen from the Crow's Nest would be very...
Julian Carey. So.
C. Repeat. Of...
I thought he said seen. He said on that occasion seen. He said see, sees, and now he said seen. 2 seconds. Simon Williams on Crow's Nest, starting now.
From a crow's nest, it is like it...
Simon Williams, speaking as the whistle went, yet again gained an extra point and has surged forward from 4th to 3rd place at the end of that round. And Linda, your turn to begin. Mickey Finn, that's the subject. Tell us something about it in this game, starting now.
Mickey Finn is something that makes you sleepy. One begins to lose consciousness. All the lights in the world seem to dim. Very much the sort of reaction I get when I hear the theme tune to Heartbeat. It's not something I enjoy. I find it tedious. It makes me sleepy. But...
Julian challenge.
2 sleepies?
No, it was sleep the first time, wasn't it? And
yes,
sleep...
that's right, Nicholas.
So, Linda, an incorrect challenge. Mickey Finn is still with you in 41 seconds, starting now.
I don't know why this soporific drug is named after Mickey Finn. Who is Mickey Finn? It's quite a good name and sounds like a 70s pop star. Mickey Finn and the Tiger Feet would have been a good band and probably still playing in a pub not a million miles from this very venue. If we were to wander down, as I'm sure we will, for a few scoops in town later on, I'm sure we'll find Mickey Finn and his fine band of men.
Clement Freud challenge.
2 bands.
It was a band before. Yes, that's right, yes. So, Clement, you've got in with 14 seconds to tell us something about Mickey Finn, starting now.
Mickey Finns are something that you slip people. It's very odd. Other drinks are poured, given, dispensed, bought, purchased. But a Mickey Finn, especially on the English Riviera, go from Torquay to Pension.
Clement Freud got that extra point for speaking as the whistle went. With other points in the round, he's moving forward, creeping up on our leader, Julian Clary, and he also begins the next round. Playing bingo, Clement.
And tell us something about that in this game starting now.
Bingo is a pastime out with my cognizance, simply not something I have done. But before the Gaming Act came about, bingo halls were not allowed to give prizes of money. So instead, when you won, you received...
Julian Clary, challenge.
Hesitation.
There was an error there, yes, Julian, so you have a point. You have 44 seconds. You have the subject of playing bingo starting now.
Playing bingo can be very exciting if you get a full house and win a packet of tea. Unfortunately, you may chance to sit on a chair sat on by an old lady who's wet herself. This is one of the many occupational hazards involved in playing one of England's premier games. I play...
Linda challenged.
Oh, I didn't really mean to challenge there. It was just...
Is it an incorrect challenge, then?
Julian was interrupted, so he gets a point for being interrupted. He has 24 seconds to continue on playing bingo, starting now.
National Bingo is advertised currently on television, in fact, you may have seen it, by Lily Savage, a close personal show business friend. She was telling me how she had to be...
Clement Freud challenge.
Deviation.
Why?
He.
Lily Savage is a woman, but the man who impersonates, takes Lily Savage, is Paul, and he is a man. So Lily
right?
Savage is a woman.
I don't believe it. That can't be true.
So Lily is definitely female, and so it is she, and therefore playing bingo is still with Julian, starting now.
It's the most marvellous game in the world. It really makes...
Clement challenge.
Repetition of game.
It is a game. You did say that before, and... Clement, you have another point. And you have 9 seconds on playing bingo starting now.
Leslie Joseph, I believe, is incredibly keen.
Julian Clary challenge.
There's no need for that kind of talk.
I think I should explain to our listeners that the reason there was that big audience reaction then was that when we were here some weeks back playing at Dartmouth, Julian Clary referred to Leslie Joseph more than once, and that's why they responded on that particular occasion, and that was because of the reaction. 6 seconds, Clement, playing bingo, starting now.
In the 1960s, dogs were called...
Julian Clary challenge.
Deviation.
Why?
You're talking about the 19... whatever it was?
1960s.
Well, I was glazing over.
I don't know what your challenge is about, but...
It was a doctor.
It was a good try over nothing, but Julian, I'm afraid it was incorrect. So Clement has got playing bingo still, with 3 seconds to go, starting now.
Dogs were called Ognib, which is...
So Clement Freud kept going to the whistle, gained that extra point with other points in the round. He's creeping up on our leader, Julian Clary, but he's still a few points to go, and they're all doing quite well, but Julian begins the next round. Oh, this is a nice subject. Sexing a tadpole. I don't know whether you have any knowledge in that area, but tell us what you can about sexing a tadpole, Julian, starting now.
As far as I understand it, sexing a tadpole is impossible because their genitals aren't yet fully formed, not unlike Dale Winton. One has to wait until they have arms and legs and they hop around, and then you chase them down the garden path, grab them round the middle, flip...
Clement Freud challenge.
I think round and round is just it.
And that is definitely repetition, yes?
I think so.
Clement, another point. And 42 seconds, sexing a tadpole, starting now.
It is quite true that a tadpole is very small. And if you were to ask a question, what is smaller than a gnat's knickers, the answer would be a knit's knackers.
Julian, you challenged.
Interesting, but irrelevant, and therefore deviation.
Yes, he wasn't talking about tadpoles, he was talking about knits and knackers, wasn't he? Yes. So I think he was deviating. He got away from the tadpole.
In Clement's defence, he might have then gone on to talk about tadpoles' todgers.
He might have done, but he was taking a long time getting there, so it was a deviation. Julian, 31 seconds, take back sexing a tadpole, starting now.
Let's get back to the heart of the matter. We're talking genitals here, we're talking amphibians.
Clement Freud challenge.
We're talking.
Clement, you got back in again, 26 seconds, sexing a tadpole, starting now.
We're talking sexing a tadpole tadpole's genitalia, a tadpole to be sexed. Sexing a tadpole. Never...
Linda challenged.
Almost willful repetition, I felt.
Of what?
Sexing a tadpole.
But that is the subject on the card. Are you allowed to repeat the subject on the card?
Well, then I stand corrected.
Clement, you still have the subject, and for 17 seconds, sexing a tadpole, starting now.
The idea of sexing a tadpole is to establish whether it is a male or a female tadpole. That's roughly what we're trying to argue today, and sexing a tadpole is something which should be done by a professional.
Clement Freud, speaking as the whistle went, gained an extra point, another point to the right. He's now only 1 point behind our leader, Julian Clary, and Linda Smith follows only not far behind, and then Simon Williams in that order. And Linda, your turn to begin. Barbecues. Tell us something about barbecues in just a minute, starting now.
Barbecues are basically cooking for men. Barbecues appeal to blokes because barbecues involve the total reversal of evolution. Civilization recedes and we are left with a fire, a stick and a caveman.
Julian, you challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, she got her laugh and couldn't resist milking it, but unfortunately it was a lovely line. 40 seconds. Barbecues with you, Julian, starting now.
Barbecues are something that common people in Australia do. I don't approve of it. I've got better things to do than wander around the garden with a stick in my hand, poking at a sausage. I'd sooner get a takeaway. What's the matter with people? And there's another thing as well that people don't often realise.
Simon Williams challenged.
People was recurring several times.
Yes, people was repeated, Simon. So you've got in there with 22 seconds. You tell us something about barbecues starting now.
I think the whole prospect of cooking and eating outside is appalling. Firstly, you put this raw food to the heat, and it invariably falls between the struts, and you see your kebab quite beyond your reach on the hot coals. Then you retrieve it and burn yourself. And by that time, you've probably been stung by various insects in the garden.
Simon Williams, speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point, and a resounding round of applause from this naval audience here, because it's the first time we were speaking as the whistle went. And you have got quite a lot of points, but I'm afraid you're still in fourth place, but only just behind Linda Smith.
I don't care anymore.
I know. But we're moving into the final round, and out in the lead, Clement Freud and Julian Clary are battling it for first place. And it's the last round, and Clement Freud, it's your turn to begin. And very aptly here, as we face this lovely audience here at the Britannia Royal Naval College in Dartmouth, the subject is the Navy. Tell us something. The subject is Navy, Clement. 60 seconds, starting now.
14793856002 is something I never was. I had this great desire to be an able seaman, but at my time was called up into the Royal Ulster Rifles. The Navy is the senior service. I never quite understood why. Surely people fought before they sailed. But nevertheless, the Navy, the most...
Simon, what was your challenge?
I think that was a hesitation.
It was a hesitation, Simon. So you have the Navy, and you have 33 seconds to tell us something about the Navy, starting now.
In the words of that lovely song, we joined the Navy to see the sea, and what did we observe? We saw the...
Julian challenge.
He tripped over his words and hesitated.
Yes, he did trip over, only just, though.
There's nothing wrong with tripping over words.
I don't think
There is when you're a trained actor.
I think
that's what it's all about. Damn it!
I think he tripped enough to call that hesitation. 26 seconds. We'd love to hear from you on the Navy, Julian. Starting now.
When I join.
Who was challenged? Clement.
Hesitation.
No. There wasn't hesitation, was there, audience? No. You have another point, Julian, and you have the audience with you, and you have 24 seconds. The Navy starting now.
I shall join the army in the fullness of time. You know I'm going to. And when I check into the barracks and they say, would you prefer top or bottom? I'll say, let me get unpacked first. Then I shall...
Clement challenged. Simon, you challenged
I
first.
challenged, yes, I did. I thought he was hesitating at the little reminiscent about what would happen.
He was repeating himself.
He was, well, that too, of course.
Yes.
I was going to cover that.
Yes. So that would be a safer bet. Right. 11 seconds are available for you to tell us something about the Navy, Simon, starting now.
We joined the Navy.
And Clement Freud challenge.
We've had that.
But you did the song before.
I was going to continue it this time, but...
Nobody had you for deviation when you said we joined the Navy to see the sea. The song is we joined the Navy to see the world. Because I get letters from people saying he deviated, but nobody challenged him, as if that was me to tell the people to challenge.
Well, thank you.
Nicholas, you don't get letters. You write them all yourself.
It's what being called a good straight man. You give them a good springboard to come back with a good laugh and get a round of applause. Well done. We enjoyed that, Linda, but...
Not my understanding of a good straight man, is it? You want to get out more?
I should give you both bonus points, but I won't resist the temptation. And Simon, you have Clement, you had a correct challenge against Simon there. And the Navy's with you 8 seconds to go in the final round here, starting now.
Up with a lark and to bed with a wren was the sort of thing that, in my day, you get Navy...
Julian Clary challenge.
It's relevant.
Relevance? Why?
We're talking about larks and wrens.
Well, you have wrens in the Navy, you know.
He's deviating.
He wasn't deviating because wrens are part of the Navy, and a very integral part of the Navy, too. And they're mingling on board as well now. The Navy is still with you, Clement, with 2 seconds to go, starting now.
Navy cut tobacco.
As I said a little while ago, this was to be the last round, and Clement Freud brought it to a close, gained that extra point for doing so. The final situation is that Simon Williams, who's not played as much as the others, but he did extremely well on this return visit to Dartmouth here. He finished equal in third place with Linda Smith. They were both a few points behind Clement Freud, who, after that initial surge of Julian Clary's, he didn't quite catch him, so 1 point ahead. It is this week, Julian Clary. So it only remains for me to say thank you to these 4 delightful players of the game, Linda Smith, Julian Clary, Clement Freud, and Simon Williams. I must also thank Janet Staplehurst, who's helping me keep the score. She'd blown a whistle when the 60 seconds was up, and our producer-director, Chris Neal. And, of course, we are indebted to Ian Messiter, who originally created Just a Minute, and we are most grateful to this lovely naval audience here in the Britannia Royal Naval College at Dartmouth for enjoying the show with us as we have enjoyed it as much playing to you. From them, from the panel, from me, Nicholas Parsons, goodbye. Tune in the next time we play Just a Minute. Cheerio!
Well, that was the last in the current series. Next...